let's assume you're the agent, Bryan, on the other end. Hey, Bryan, so understand what's important to the seller. Boom, 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 boom. Bryan, what's important to you in the offer? And it's amazing. That question is so rarely asked. But maybe it's, I want certain service providers. I want a certain title company or whatever. Ask me those questions. Because when you do, you're like, okay. Like, if an agent asks me that, I'm like, okay, this guy wants to get a deal done, right? They're a team player, and they're going to do what it takes to get a deal done. Welcome to the Whissel Way Podcast. My name is Kyle Whissel, your host with Whissel Realty Group and eXp Realty in San Diego.
And I am Bryan Koci, Director of Media here at Whissel Realty Group.
The goal of the show is to give you the tools and techniques to go out there and crush it in your business. The way that we like to do that is to answer the questions that you have for us. And rather than guessing at what questions you have for us, we will just listen to you. And so we listen when you submit questions at thewhisselway.com. thewhisselway.com. You can ask us questions on there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and podcast. You can also join our referral network, our Facebook group, and our email newsletter to get tips and tricks of what we're working on in our office. And lastly, you can get dialed in with our Media Mayor Mastermind Masterclass, which is Bryan and I teaching you everything you need to know to crush with video in 2022, whether you're just starting out and you're shooting with a cell phone or you got a whole film crew. We're going to teach you everything from simple one-to-one videos to send out to your database, to send out to your buyers and sellers to separate yourself from the competition. We're going to teach you how to shoot killer community videos, listing videos, how to distribute your videos, how to run ads, how to do follow-up, and ultimately how to turn these content, what would they be, viewers and content guests into clients. So thewhisselway.com, get all the details on all of that stuff on there. If you enjoy the show today, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that little thumbs up button, let YouTube know that you're enjoying the show. And if you want to get notified of future episodes of the show, hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell. And if you are listening on a podcast platform, hook us up with a review on there. Those reviews go a very long way. All right, Bryan, what do we got today? This is all the energy Bryan's got left in the tank. He's going to let it all go right now.
Let's go. That's all I had. So many people know you as a team leader, a real estate agent, someone who's done lots of deals in the past. And one of the things I think that we take for granted is you as a resource in terms of, again, now we see you more and more as a team leader, CEO, that type of thing. I think we take for granted how good you are at actually negotiating deals. I mean, you helped me sell my house and you helped me buy my house. And so I want to share with you guys watching kind of some of your big negotiation tips. One, to help get offers accepted, some of the key things that you can do. And two, some of the things that you can negotiate on the sales side on how to get more for your seller.
Okay.
I don't know. The buyer side's going to be way easier. I don't know how you're going to do what the seller one looks like, but
yeah, for
I'll let you figure it out.
All right, well, let's just start with some of the basics of negotiating. And the number one mistake that I see people make, especially today in negotiating, is they try to do it all via text. So whether it be text messages or via emails, everybody's trying to negotiate via text or an email today. And yes, I get that all of our communication for the most part is via text. It's all digital today. And Zuckerberg wants to make it even more digital. I don't know about this whole meta thing. I'm sure you can probably go back and pull this clip years from now. They basically want to like strip you who you are as a human and make you a virtual person. And I don't know if I'm a fan of it. Might be because I'm now 40, so I could talk like an old guy. But I got to like spend so much time this weekend with a bunch of close friends and virtually no phones. And it was so nice to just truly be like connected to people and have conversations and not be in this whole digital world. And I think there's too much of a dependency on that stuff right now.
From what I've seen, is the metaverse, is that the exact same thing as eXp world?
Some might say that, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're going to probably take it to another level because they might have a few more dollars.
They should.
But,
they better.
Something along those lines, yeah. There's actual real estate that you purchase. And yeah, it's like Sims or Roblox or some of these other things that are very popular right now.
God, I love Sims.
Yeah. But I don't love, so the thing is, to get back out of the rabbit hole and back on track, is you have to actually pick up the fucking phone. and have a conversation with somebody if you want to truly negotiate. Because the thing is, when you're sending a text or you're sending an email, you're giving people time to process and you're giving people time to respond, and you have zero tone in the response that they give you. Well, as a good salesperson, I can read somebody extremely well based on the speed in which they respond, right? When I ask somebody a question, if it takes them a while to respond, I know that there's a lack of confidence if they take too long to respond, because they're trying to think like, shit, what do I say? What do I say? I don't know. Like, that shows weakness in a negotiation. I could tell by the tone with which they respond. I could tell by the length of the response, right? You all know there's like that analogy, just take a ball of spaghetti and throw it against the wall to see what sticks. Like, people do that when they're in a negotiation and they're out of control. They just like, blah, 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 they just say so much shit, hoping like one of the things they say actually is going to stick, when in reality, they're just showing how weak their position is. So I can't get all of that in a text message. I can't get all of that in an email. And so I think the most important thing, I don't care if you're getting into this industry and you're 18 years old, pick up the fucking phone. If you're 118, put the fax machine down and pick up the phone. Like, your fax machine probably has a phone attached to it with a cord. Pick it up. Like, we have to actually talk to people. And so whether that be face-to-face, whether that be via Zoom, or whether that be via phone call or FaceTime or whatever, you got to have an actual conversation with somebody so you can read someone. Because a good salesperson can read the person on the other end. And so I would say that's number one most important thing when it comes to negotiating.
Okay. So now when you're negotiating for your buyers, what are some of the things that you're trying to get? So obviously sales prices is the obvious negotiation, right? And so for veteran agents listening to this, they probably know a couple of these. But for new agents listening in, they go, it's price, but what else? What else can you negotiate on your buyer's behalf?
I mean, there's three primary objectives when you're trying to negotiate a deal. And this is whether it's for a buyer or for a seller.
Okay.
Number one is get a deal done. Most importantly, right? Like, we got to get a deal done. Otherwise, none of it matters. So first and foremost, if a buyer is hiring me and they found the house they want, the number one objective is get them the freaking deal. So that's paramount. But then in addition to that, it's going to be at the right price and the right terms. And now we have to have a clear understanding that price and terms are not of equal importance to every person. Mm-hmm. Some people, the terms are going to be more important. When I say terms, it could be how quickly does the deal close. It could be how long do they have to get their inspection done, or how long do they have to get their loan done, or
rent back.
Yeah, does the seller need to rent it back afterwards? Because even though this might be the perfect house, right, we're in a weird situation with our office right now where we're going to have to double move, and it sucks. If there was a way to have avoided that, right, we would have loved to do that. So if somebody's in a situation where their lease is ending on their current house and they found a house they really want, but that seller needs 4 months in the house, those terms might not line up. So that deal might not work. Even though they'd be willing to pay more money, if the terms don't make sense, the price doesn't matter. So there could be that scenario. And then you just have other people like, hey, I'm renting a month to month. When I find the right deal, I'm good. I don't really care if the seller wants a quick close, I'll close quick. If they want to close in 4 months, I'm good with that too. So I would say price and terms are going to be the other two, primary items of importance, but it's not always going to be the same for every buyer. Some buyers, the terms are more important, and some, the price is more important.
So we went through some of the terms, right? You said rent back, closing time.
It's close, the contingency periods or due diligence periods, depending on where you're at in the world. And then does the seller need extra time in the house after it closes? Or we refer to that as a rent back here in California. So does the seller want to stay in the house after it closes while they move on to their next, residence?
And there's also things like appliances, home warranty, credits. Would that be part of the terms?
That would be all terms. Okay. I mean, yeah. So, and again, now these can vary from even city to city, but state to state. Here in California or in San Diego, it's extremely common that a buyer is going to have an inspection done on a property, and then they can request repairs on it. Where if you're up in the Bay Area right now, in San Francisco area, like there are no inspections. Like you could do one for your own informational purposes, but there's no repairs made. So we got to understand these things are all going to be a little bit different from location to location. So those are all going to be factors. And like here we have something called a natural hazard disclosure, which that doesn't exist in other states. So there's going to be a lot of like state to state, stuff that's going to vary. But the primary things that are going to be universal is closing time, the contingency periods or due diligence periods. Those are all going to be very common. And then the third is just going to be how long, like when is the seller actually going to move? Are they going to move prior to close, or are they going to need to stay in the house for a period of time after it closes?
One of the things I want to go back a couple minutes to what you said is that number one is getting the deal closed. And so what I really like to hear from that, and I saw you do this on my deal when you helped me buy my house, is it's not a me versus them type thing. It's definitely a collaborative. Now, obviously, you want to get your buyers the best price. They want to get their sellers the best price. But the goal is to get a deal done. And I feel like you can do that typically a lot better when you're working together rather than kind of going head to head, right?
For sure. And that all comes from having conversations with the agent, right? So assuming we're in the buying role, we got to have a conversation with the listing agent before we write an offer. I can't tell you how many offers I've received as a listing agent where I've never had a conversation with the person. They've never asked a single question. And I've got a seller, like I just sold one. The seller wanted 4 months from the time that we listed the home. So they wanted a 2-month escrow and then 2 months to rent it back afterwards. They wanted 4 months. Well, somebody comes in with a 10-day close. Well, guess what? You freaked my seller out.
Yeah.
The last thing my seller wanted was a 10-day close. You actually hurt yourself. You thought you were helping yourself by coming in with a 10-day close because you wanted to look strong, but you actually freaked the seller out. So that's why it's so important, too, to have a conversation is, yes, my goal is to get my buyer, 1, get them the house they want, 2, get it at the right price, and 3, get it at the terms they want. And again, 2 and 3 are interchangeable. But at the same time, the way that I focus on number 1, which is getting them the house, is understanding what's important to the seller, right? So anytime I'm going to be submitting an offer for a buyer, I want to have a conversation with the seller's agent, and I want to find out what's important to the seller, right? What's their situation and what's important to them. Do they want a quick close? Do they want a long close? Do they, if they just finished a deal that fell through and it was because the buyer did an inspection and asked for 1 million repairs, okay, well, maybe your seller's a little bit gun shy about the inspection right now. So if we could do something to, mitigate that by coming in with a short inspection period or none, because we already have a report, maybe that could make it more attractive for the seller. So I need to know that. I need to know, do they want to stay after it closes and rent it back? Like, I got to ask a series of questions. So one, I want to know what's the seller's situation, what's important to them. And then the question that people don't ask a lot of times is, let's assume you're the agent, Bryan, on the other end. Hey, Bryan, so I understand what's important to the seller. Boom, 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 boom. Bryan, what's important to you in the offer? And it's amazing. That question is so rarely asked. But maybe it's, I want certain service providers. I want a certain title company or whatever. Ask me those questions. Because when you do, you're like, okay. Like, if an agent asks me that, I'm like, okay, this guy wants to get a deal done, right? They're a team player, and they're going to do what it takes to get a deal done. Most people, they just blindly write an offer, never ask a single question, and then write a 10-day close offer with all their preferred service providers. And it's like, well, you shot yourself in the foot. If we could have just had a quick conversation, we would have been able to address a lot of these issues, and it could have helped you make your offer more attractive. So ask a series of questions to understand what's the seller's situation, and maybe they won't share that with you, but you got to ask. And then what's important to the seller, and then what's important to the agent. Those are the 3 things that I want to try to get every time when I'm representing a buyer prior to writing an offer.
Now, we have a offer submission portal that you use when you have things listed, so that way you're not getting an email here, someone's not texting you an offer. As a listing agent, do you think it would be, now obviously it depends on the situation of your seller, but do you think it would be valuable adding that information in on the listing portal? Hey, they're looking to have a longer rent back. Like, these are the things that are most important to them?
You run into issues fitting everything, because on our MLS it's called confidential remarks or agent remarks in other areas. You can only fit so many characters in that space. And if you try to put too much in there, a lot of things get lost.
Okay.
Like the more important things, like submitting, don't email or fax me the offer, submit it here. If I put too much stuff in that block, agents have, a lot of agents are extremely high Ds and forget how to read. So by putting too much information in there, sometimes it does more harm than good, where you think you're helping, but then you put so much stuff in there, they actually read none of it. And so they miss the stuff that's really important. So we try to really only put the most pertinent stuff in those agent or confidential remarks.
Cool. What else helps with your, is there a book that you would recommend or an audio book or a?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, it's like the book you have to have. It starts to teach you about like, oh, it seems like, it sounds like, it feels like. What I hear you saying is like, there's so many great things that he teaches in that book, and his masterclass and the masterclass app is phenomenal as well. So he's kind of the de facto source for helping with negotiation. So if you want to learn more about negotiating, like he'd be the guy I'd be studying.
I had something else. I forgot it.
Okay. Well, you want to hit on sellers?
Sure. So on the seller side, how do you run that?
Yeah. So same thing on the seller side is, we want to have conversations with people, and I want to feel people out a lot of times and see. I probe, and this is not either buy side or sell side. So even if I'm on the buy side, I'll ask an agent a lot of times like, hey, how are the offers coming in? What's it going to take to get this deal done? And a lot of listing agents will shut you down, and that's totally okay. But then what I'll usually do is I'll throw numbers out there. So right now I think our average price is about $800,000. So let's just assume it's an $800K listing. I'll float it out there. I'll be like, hey, Bryan, where do we need to come in at to get this deal done? And you're like, oh, well, just put your best foot forward. We're going to just do everything you can, because that's what most agents will say. And be like, hey, Bryan, I totally understand. It sounds like 800 might not be enough to get it done. If we came in at 825, do you think that would get the deal done, Bryan? And then I'm going to pay attention to how you respond. How quickly are you responding? How confidently are you responding? And how much are you talking? Because if you're like, no, that's not going to get it done, I know it's actually well above that.
Yep.
Where if you take a while to respond and you talk too much, you're actually showing, you might actually be bullshitting me. So those are, I'll start to probe, and they'll be like, nah, 825 is not, okay, dude, I mean, would 850 even have a chance? Like, I'll throw stuff like that out there just to try to feel them out to see what their response is. And again, via text, they could bullshit me. It's easy. It's a lot harder to bullshit somebody face-to-face or over the phone.
Cool.
So on the sell side, now my job is to, again, one, get the deal done. That doesn't change, right? That's always our job, is get the deal done. And then, again, sellers and buyers are going to be, or sellers, there's going to have some sellers who are more worried about the price and some that are more worried about the terms. And then what I've seen a lot is sellers who are more worried about who the buyer is, which I think is crazy. I could not care less who buys my house. Like, we sold my house, and my wife's like, oh my gosh, they're doing all this work to it. They said they weren't going to do it.
I was like, you couldn't care.
For them. They paid the highest price in the history of the city. They can do whatever the hell they want to the house. I could not care less what they do.
Well, the
more
HOA
power
would care.
to them. I don't care. I'm not the HOA. So you do whatever the hell you want to the house. I do not care who moves into my house. Dude, I love my old neighbors. Yeah. If somebody came in and I couldn't stand the person, but they were still paying the highest price, sorry, neighbors. Like, I'm not going to leave money on the table for my old neighbors that I maybe never see again. Like, that's silly.
Just be like, fine, I'll choose this person. You guys just have to give us $200K, and we'll call it even.
Yeah, if you don't want these guys moving in, it's $200,000. So, yeah. So there are sellers though that it does matter to, and while to me that's insane, to other people it matters. So if it matters to your seller, then your job is to, do what matters to your seller. So you got to get the job done. Most importantly. Some sellers, like I just had a guy sell, he netted like $3 million from the sale. Like, did he care if he netted 2.8, 2.9, 3.13? Like, does it really going to change this person's life? Like, not really. Terms were more important to him. Like, getting a deal done, and there was some tax things that he had to contend with. So to him, the terms were more important. Getting it done by a set date mattered a lot to him, less than the price. And then I've had others where they're like, just show me the money, right? Jerry Maguire, show me the money. So we got to understand where our seller is coming from, most importantly. And then what's more fun on the sell side is we have no obligation to share where offers come in at. We cannot lie, so we have not allowed to lie because we have a code of ethics that we have to uphold, but we don't ever have to tell people where other offers are. And so one of the best deals I ever did, there was this property. It was sitting, and it was in somewhat of a rural area, sitting, and we were listed at, I think we had dropped price 2 or 3 times, and I think we're at $950 on the price, and I get 2 lowball offers, and then I get 1 offer at full price. And when I'm talking lowball, these ones are like, one was in the 7s, one was in the 8s, and then I get one at full price at $950. Well, here's what's great is I can now go back to all 3 people and I can say, hey, here's the situation. I've got 3 offers on the table. The sellers asked me to go back to all buyers, request their highest and best offers. We're going to put a deadline on this of Friday at 3 o'clock, whatever the timing is. And now some buyers will just snap back and write a response because, again, they don't have conversations. But then some buyers will call and say, like, hey, what's it going to take to get this thing done? Again, I have no obligation to tell anybody where the other offers are at. But if somebody comes back and says, hey, what do we need to do to get this thing done? Now at this point, I'd be like, look, man, I got 3 offers on the table. Like, if you can come up to $1,050,000, I can get this deal done for you. I don't have to tell them that the other offers are at $700,000 and $800,000. I have no obligation to do that. That's my job, is to negotiate on my seller's behalf. And in that scenario, I got my seller $100,000 more than the list price because I had those 2 other offers on the table. I didn't lie. I did nothing to.
And you didn't do anything shady. You didn't be like, hey, Jeremy, put an offer in on bullshit offer. Like, you didn't do anything shady.
And I didn't lie and be like, oh, yeah, well, all 3 of you guys are right there neck and neck. I said, hey, if you can do this, I can get the deal for you.
Yeah.
And now I ended up getting $100,000 more when they were already $100,000 over the next closest offer. Like, that's the beauty when you're on the sell side, is you have a little bit more of the power where you can do things like that. I'm a really big fan, and this goes whether I'm on the buy side or the sell side. Would you or could you, right? Like, if I can get you the deal, can you come up to $1,050,000? And I would do that on the flip side too, on the buy side. Like, if we can come up to $1,050,000, can you get me the deal?
I like that. That's a really good nugget right there.
Yeah, so we just did that on one over the weekend. I was helping one of the agents out on a deal, and we got to the point, and then we got the agent to say, like, if you can come up to $795,000, it's yours. Done, right? Like, if I would you or if I could you. So I'll use that whether I'm on the buy side or the sell side all the time.
Real quick, because we kind of mentioned these, I just want your spitfire answer. On the buy side, do you recommend having your buyers do a love letter about me?
100% of the time. 100%.
On the sell side, do you present that to your sellers?
I strongly discourage them from looking at them until after they've picked an offer.
They look at it like, can I unaccept this or what's up? Escalation clause on the buy side.
I'm a fan if I'm on the buy side.
And on the sell side?
I will use it against you.
Okay.
So if you write me an escalation clause, let's just run that scenario again. If you're like, I'll pay $5,000 over the highest offer received up to $1,050,000. You just told me you're willing to pay $1,050,000. Guess what? I'm going to counter your ass at $1,050,000 because I know you're willing to pay it, or maybe even higher.
$5,000 over it.
Yeah. So now I'm not going to lie to you and be like, oh, I got an offer at $1,045,000, so you need to pay $1,050,000. But if you write me an escalation clause that says you'll pay $5,000 over up to $1,050,000, you just said I'm willing to pay $1,050,000. I'm going to take the $1,050,000 from you.
So if you're writing an escalation clause on the buy side, do you do the up to?
I like to leave it blank. And the most important thing, if you're on the buy side, you have to have a conversation with the listing agent first. It's so funny how many people just blindly send an escalation clause. That's worthless. Like, if you don't talk, again, we tie right back to where we started this thing. Like, I got to have a conversation with the listing agent, make sure they're on board. Because an escalation clause, if it's not signed by the seller, it's invalid. It's worthless. Just because you wrote it doesn't mean I'm honoring it. I have to agree to it. And when I say I mean me and the seller have to agree to it. If my seller doesn't sign saying, okay, I'm cool with this escalation clause, it has no weight. Now, not my current house, but my last house, I bought with an escalation clause. I talked to the agent. Agent was cool with it. Seller's cool with it. They signed it. And then we had a deadline. And once the offers came in, we paid X dollars above the highest offer, and it was ours.
I mean, there's really no downside, right? Because you can always back out of an escalation clause. Like, if you get it, your $5,000 over, say your max was $1,050,000, and it went to 1.2, you can back out. I mean, you're
not contractually obligated, right? Like, you could say, oh, I would research Megan's Law and there's a sex offender nearby and I'm not comfortable living there. Or I did the commute and the commute was way too long. Or there's a criminal in the area. Yeah. Or I lost my job, or blah, blah, blah. There's a million things, right? I mean, you still have outs.
Yeah. So
like somebody might not be happy if you write an escalation clause to $1,050,000 and then
and
you
of
bail
course,
on them. But
yeah, that's not the
so
goal.
don't do that like all the time. But if it happens, I mean,
Yeah, that's not the goal. But if you're bidding on a place and you're like, oh, I thought it was going to go to $1,050,000 and it went to 1.3, like,
yeah.
and it needs $200,000 worth of work, like that's not going to happen. So cool. That's all I got for you there.
Good. All right, cool. Well, before we jump into our widget of the week, if you are enjoying the show today, if you're listening on a podcast platform, if you could hook us up with a review on there, we'd really appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, let YouTube know you're enjoying the show, and hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell so you get notified of future episodes of the show. And if you are, wow, totally spacing out, huh? Wow. If you have questions you want to have us answer on a future episode of the show, you can go to thewhisselway.com. Ask us questions on there. Subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel. Join the Referral Network email newsletter and Facebook group where we share tips and tricks. And get dialed in with our Media Mayor Mastermind Masterclass. We have to change the name of it because I kind of like using Masterclass, but there's probably a copyright, so we should look at that.
Let's take out the word mayor so I can run an ad easier. Oh, my God.
So if you want to get dialed in with that masterclass where we go super deep into everything we've learned in 7 years of shooting videos together, the tips, the tricks to really shortcut that learning curve so you can go out there and really incorporate video in your 2020 game plan, go to thewhisselway.com. With that said, Bryan, widget of the week, something you utilize to make your life easier, have more fun, make more money. What do you got for us?
So this is a combination between if you like Amazon and the ease of ordering things online, and you like Costco and getting like hot tubs in groups of 6, this is the app for you, especially if you don't have a specific time where it needs to be delivered. And this is, do you know what I'm talking about? No, you weren't even listening.
Nope.
Alibaba or AliExpress is kind of like the Amazon bulk ordering thing. I know a lot of people use this to do drop shipping or whatever, but it's basically like Amazon, but you usually buy in bulk. So you would buy, instead of buying one microphone for $9, you'd buy 100 for $50. And so the cost per piece is significantly lower. This is great if you're running a team and you want to have a bunch of things for your team or for your clients. Again, the lead time, it's coming from China, so it's going to take a little while. But if you're building out kits of some sort, AliExpress is kind of their consumer version, and Alibaba.com is their kind of their business version. And you can get a bunch of cool shit for really cheap. It just takes a while to get here.
Especially when things get stuck on shipping containers for a few months.
Yeah, I bought some buttons and switches. I was going to build a little box for my kids so they can do stuff, and then I was going to like wire it together, and then it got really complicated. So I've got buttons and switches in a box.
I made one of those for Nixon. I spent like $50 at Home Depot and had all these latches, and I was like, I could have just bought this shit on Amazon for like $5.
Dude, they're expensive.
Are
They're like
they?
$150 to get. Yeah.
Those sensory boxes, I think they call them.
Yeah, but I wanted one with like buttons
actual
and
wires
lights
and lights. Okay.
So I hit up my dad's friends. I'm like, can you guys do it? And they're like, it's Halloween. I can't do anything right now. I'm like, well, talk to you later.
That's when Radio Shack was good for that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Oh, well. R.I.P. Radio Shack. All right, cool. I want to share. This is a new one we literally just implemented on our team here in the last week. And one of the things that we saw within our team is that our agents constantly, we had like we were using Workplace, we're moving over to Slack. We had this channel for haves and wants. So if you have a buyer who is looking for something particular, you would be like, oh, I got a buyer who is looking for this. And then you got a seller, you're like, I got this new listing. And it's just so hard to find stuff. And it's like somebody would post something, but you'd forget about it. And it was just a mess. So we really wanted to find a new system where we could really make things easy. So if you got a buyer who's looking for something, obviously you have your search on the MLS, but you want to know about like what's coming soon or pocket listings and whatnot, which now obviously Clear Cooperation, you could share within your office. So make sure you comply with all those rules, blah, blah, blah. But this system allows you to, if you're working with a buyer, put your search in. And now if somebody on your team has something coming soon or they have a pocket listing, they put it in the system, and the system's like, oh, well, we got a buyer, boom. It notifies you just like an IDX solution or an MLS does, but now this is for pre-MLS or pocket listings. So if you have a buyer, you put the info in, or if you have a seller, you put the info in. And so it allows you, let's say you're on the buy side of things, it allows you to look like a badass to your buyers because you're telling them about stuff that's not on the MLS yet, which is a huge degree of separation from your competition. And then if you're on the sell side, it's really good. You're going into a listing appointment. You could punch in the details of somebody's property and you'd be like, look, I already got like 4 buyers in the system that are looking for a property like this. We could possibly do this deal without ever even going on the MLS. You don't have to deal with the showings or the open houses. So super cool tool. It's called Raven, like the bird, Raven. And yeah, super stoked on this system. This is a new one that we're just integrated into our business.
Raven.io?
I think it's .raven.re.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's .re.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's way better.
Yeah, so super cool system. Yeah, we just implemented it, so it's still pretty new for us, but so far the agents seem to be pretty stoked on it. And it's just a much needed thing now, especially if you're with a bigger brokerage too, right? You can share listings within your brokerage and still be in compliance with clear cooperation. So the bigger the brokerage, the more beneficial this is.
And the thing that I really like about it is they did, I think, a really, really good job of being able to communicate who has what, but still keeping your listing or your buyer's information private. So I can see, oh, Kyle has a person for this, but they're not going to be like, yeah, go ahead and call Kyle's client Bob and Mary. Like, that's not going to be a thing.
For sure.
But then it goes, oh, I'll call Kyle and say, hey, it says you have someone in your database. Who is it? Let's do a deal.
Yep. So killer system to replace a haves and want channel. So hopefully you guys got a ton of value out of the show today. And again, I'm Kyle Whissel with EXP here in San Diego, along with Mr. Bryan Koci. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Whissel Way Podcast.
See you guys next week.
Wait. Before you leave, I want to share some more tips and tricks that we're using in our business to take it to that next level. Just click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Click right here.